And we are live. Playoffs?
Playoffs?
Let's get started, man.
All right.
Warning.
For the W, a Wisconsin sports podcast.
May contain language that you don't want your children to hear. I don't want my children to hear. That will upset those with sensitive ears.
Whether they're elderly, whether they are infantile, whether they are somewhere in between, if they have a dislike for swearing or lewd or crude content, they may not want to be in the room for this podcast particularly. But what we do think they should know
is that we will have the best Bucks, Packers, and Badgers content this week. So if they like that, it might be worth the curse.
Yeah, you could just yell over it. Thanks for listening.
Let's do it.
Spelled like words.
Oh, hey there, John.
Yo! Hey there, Nick.
And we are back. Another episode.
Just like the last time, we're doing it via video.
So, John is an artist. He will never break the fourth wall. We all know this, but I will. Welcome to For the W, a Wisconsin sports podcast. I am Nick James. This is John Brady, and we are happy to be bringing you our 99th episode of For the W, a Wisconsin sports podcast this week. Did I say that already?
I don't think you said much because we haven't been out of the intro that long, but Nick, that means that the next episode is the 100th episode of this very podcast. And I just want to take a moment to express an attitude of gratitude, much like a 2020 Aaron Rodgers would do. Nick, when we started this podcast a couple years ago, we sold this story on the pod many times before, but it started with you and me just workshopping. We were like, are we going to play music? Are we going to talk about records? Are we going to just chop it up? And we ended up finally landing on Wisconsin sports as the one thing that people wanted to hear from us about.
Yeah, and pretty much the only thing that anyone ever wants to hear about. So we can promise all the sports you care about and none of the ones that you don't.
Yep, and then directly following us landing on that very important information with regards to what the podcast would be, the sports world immediately shut down around us due to COVID, and we were forced to soldier on, as they would say on British television. I've been watching a lot of Great British Bake Off. I've been watching a lot of the not Handmaid's Tale. That's dark.
Yeah, my wife was watching that one, and I was like, I will never watch this.
Oh, it's good.
I had to read it for a course years ago.
Yeah, it's the other one about the nurses, in Britain, they birth the children, the wet nurses.
Oh,
no, not
okay.
the wet nurses, the whatever they're called. Either way, British television at its best.
The best thing about the Great British Baking Show is that one of the hosts
I fucking love the Great British Baking Show.
It's the dude that plays Old Greg. I don't know if you know that skit from the Mighty Boosh. I'm Old Greg. And once I realized watching the Great British Baking Show that, dude, that's Old Greg, I instantly, my whole world opened up and I was born anew.
Well, I'll tell you what I love about the Great British Baking Show. And in Britain, they have a knitting version. They have a whole home ec reality TV slate that they do, but it's like a literal sport. It is competition especially once you get down to the last 3 or 4 at its highest level. And baking is such an exact science that it is just really, really impressive to see what they're able to do. And it's just filled with an attitude of love and gratitude as well. And so how did we get to Britain?
I have no idea. I've been thinking, where is John going with this the whole time?
What
the hell? The whole time I'm like, how did he get here? But this is still, in fact, a Wisconsin sports podcast. We will be talking Badgers. We will be talking Bucks. And we'll be talking Packers, not in that order, though. We're actually going to go Bucks, then Packers, then Badgers.
Bucks, Badgers, Packers, I thought.
That's what I just said.
No, you said it the other way.
But that's what I just said. That's not the order we're going to do it. We are, in fact, going to go Bucks, Badgers, and Packers.
Bucks, Badgers, Packers.
We'll rewind this and we'll see. We can do that now, John. We can do that now.
And as you can see, this is the type of content that provides 99 episodes worth of talking with one another, Nick.
And 99 problems. But coming up with enough stuff for you and I to talk about is not one of them.
No.
We have known each other since we were like 10 years old, and we have never had a dull moment in a conversation. And I don't think it's going to happen tonight either.
Why say 3 words when you could say 48?
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I'm drinking this Maker's Mark 101. This is a good-ass bourbon. It's keeping the juices flowing.
That's 2 episodes from now.
Yeah, so next week will be 100.
Should we do a Wild Turkey 101 for 101st episode and just...
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. But before we do, we need to talk about what we're going to do in this week. As we mentioned, it will go Bucks, Badgers, Packers.
Yes.
We are going to head and transport to the North Woods. Before we get there, we'd like to remind everybody that although you are probably watching this on YouTube now, because who isn't, you can still find us at forthew.buzzsprout.com. That is our main feed, and from there you will find that we are
everywhere, Nick. We are there. And also, when you stumble upon our podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe. 5 stars is still the only rating currently being accepted at this time through the first 100 episodes. We'll give an update during the 100th episode, a very special update about the future of ratings that will be accepted for this podcast at that time. But Nick, still 5 stars only right now.
It's the supply chain. We can't control it.
It's the supply chain, and it's just affecting a lot.
And you may be thinking to yourself, Nick, John, if I can watch you guys on YouTube, why would I listen to a standard podcast? And I'll tell you why. Because we do have some special mastering that goes into the only audio version of this podcast. So if you are listening in your car on your drive to work through forthew.buzzsprout.com, you will find that actually the audio quality will be even better than it is right now. It's still damn good, but then there's additional mastering that takes place from our host. And so when we go and transport...
Call the midwife. It's called Call the Midwife, Nick.
Well, I'm glad you thought of that, John. And I think that takes us, because I'm going to call... Oh, here we go. Finally, I can relax, because this whole time I'm like, why are we going British on this? For the B.
For the Britain. Close our eyes and think of England, Nick.
Merry, jolly old. And in moments like this, I like to think about professional football and the way that Ted Lasso may change British culture.
Did you see Darvin Ham and the side-by-side with the Ted Lasso clip from when he's at Wichita State?
No.
So Darvin Ham got his first victory in the NBA as the head coach of the Bucks against the Brooklyn Nets on national TV. We waxed him. And then he went in the locker room and he was doing like
he did like the full on Ted Lasso.
Well, it was like a spur of the moment thing. Like that was just the way he was feeling. He was feeling some type of way to make him do that. So it wasn't like on purpose. But yes, he went full Ted Lasso.
Oh, I haven't seen that, and I need to see that.
And then they gave him an ice bath. Or no, they previously had given him an ice bath. So he had to keep moving, keep the blood flowing.
Darvin Ham is just one of those like quintessential Bucks. Like when he came in the league as a Buck, I don't know if he came into it as a Buck.
Hammer.
Yeah, he had those wacky ears, but man, that guy could dunk. Man, what a great story to have him now coaching the Bucks as well.
It's incredible. It really is. And it is something where he was asked about being a head coach, and he said, I kind of like where I'm at right now. I've been with Bud since day one. He is just such a stand-up guy. It's something we've talked about on this podcast during some of the Mike Budenholzer low points, that Darvin Ham is sitting there waiting in the wings, and I believe that he would get a head coaching gig. It sounds like maybe he's not necessarily pursuing that at the moment with the same gumption that maybe somebody in a less functional situation might, but I think it speaks to Bud. I think it speaks to Darvin. I'll never forget him hugging Chris Middleton after they beat the Heat in Game 4 in the bubble, and it was like our last stand, and you could tell the players just loved him. Pretty cool. But Nick, here in the Northwoods,
Yeah.
it's really important to take time and to really think back. Like I said, close your eyes and think of England. Close your eyes and think of Wisconsin
Yeah.
on this podcast.
Okay.
And so what I've decided
Merry old
to do,
Wisconsin.
and I'd like the listeners to know, Nick's a little lukewarm on this idea, but I'm gonna
Super
push
lukewarm.
him through. I'm gonna push through. So I want to highlight Wisconsin figures that have shaped the culture of our great state. Every once in a while on the Campfire segment to give us a gateway into what we might be seeing from the sports landscape itself. And so there's no better man to do that than one Mr. Leopold. That's Aldo Leopold, Nick.
Yeah.
And
Let's hear what AL's got to say.
yeah, I was reading the Sand County Almanac, a must read for any Wisconsinite. I will just say that right now.
How does it compare with like Laura Ingalls Wilder?
It compares in it is a more philosophical tone.
All right.
And a more like less defined, because it's a collection of essays. Like,
So he's like the Walt Whitman of Wisconsin.
it's similar. It's somewhere between those two. It's definitely like,
Or is it more Thoreau?
it's not Thoreau. Thoreau's like Thoreau, like he was in the physical world. In the literature world, in my opinion, is a crazy man in the woods, and so it's very like harsh and everything. This is much more like I traipse through my property in the Sand Counties and write essays about it. And the essay, Nick, that I'm going to read from today is aptly titled.
Still want to just say I'm super lukewarm.
It is from January, the first chapter in Sand County Almanacs. And he had me thinking about it because A, it is January, Nick.
Finally.
B,
Everyone's favorite month in Wisconsin.
absolutely, Nick. Absolutely. B, well, it is the favorite month for some creatures, but B, these creatures can offer a little bit of guidance for both the Packers and the Bucks and maybe the Badgers as well. What I'm talking about is field mice, Nick.
Oh, yeah.
So Aldo, in his chapter January, talks about field mice, and here's what he says, Nick. He says that the mouse is a sober citizen who knows that grass grows in order that mice may store it as underground haystacks, and that snow falls in order that mice may build subways from stack to stack. Supply, demand, and transport all neatly organized. To the mouse, snow means freedom from want and fear, Nick. Nick, that's a lesson that I feel like, again, I'll repeat myself, is apt for those two professional teams, the Bucks and the Packers, and for the Badgers as well, because it's all about controlling what you can control, staying focused on your world, your role, your responsibility.
Now you're talking my language.
And I think that I was thinking about this a bit, and I posted on Twitter. The Bucks' average game is a win for them. The Packers' average game this season has been a win for them. They do not have to play to an elite status to beat a pretty good team in the NFL. Like the Arizona win, we played average. The San Francisco win, average. Cincinnati win, average. These are good teams. Clearly, they're in the playoffs. It's all about controlling our side of things. And much like the field mouse in January, we have taken an introspective approach in the locker room for both of those teams. And I think it's something that we really, especially in this current climate of Aaron Rodgers really just pissing everybody off, you know,
Except for me.
except for Nick and a couple of, I mean, I'm not, never mind.
Aaron Rodgers did this whole thing where he pissed me off to such a level that now everything he does I just find comical. You know, like when something gets so bad that you get to a point where you're just laughing. That's where Aaron is for me.
Aaron Rodgers is the field mouse who kind of pokes his head up over the snow and is like, guys, there's a whole world out here. Y'all got to see it, and you need to see me in it, and I'm going to thrive. And that's a good role model for a young quarterback like Jordan Love to have, you know, but it definitely is going to rub most other field mice the wrong way, you know.
I guess. Yeah, I guess. And speaking of rubbing field mice the wrong way, title of your sex tape.
Sand County Almanac, Aldo Leopold.
Nice.
Staple of conservation literature.
But let's bring this back to the Packers. So let's control what we can control. Let's take the environment and make it a positive, and let's run the ball into the playoffs because we're going to be playing in a frozen tundra. There's no amount of hay that an opposing team could find that would keep them warm, that would provide solace,
or keep us out of.
Yes. So let's look at that. How does this relate to the Bucs and the Badgers?
Well, same thing for the Bucs, where it's like just controlling what they can control. Every time I watch this team, and we're going to have a big matchup, something I've been talking about since the early days of this season, Bucs Warriors coming up this Thursday. We're going to see what we look like against the other, in my opinion, only other title favorite in the NBA this year. We'll see what we look like against them, but even against Brooklyn in both game one and this one last week where we waxed them both times, we played pretty well. We did not play anywhere near the level that we played games 3 through 6, or I would even argue 2 through 6 in the NBA Finals. We have not had to put the pedal to the metal in a lot of these wins. And when we play well, we can't lose. When we play average, we still win almost every single time. There are not a lot of teams that push us. And it's important to remember that and stay focused on it. Especially, that was kind of Giannis's downfall and Chris's downfall before, is that they get a little wrapped up in the moment. I think Drew has solved a lot of that, and I think experience has solved the rest of it. But I think that just focusing on what they can control. When it comes to field mice and the Badgers, Nick, Brad Davidson will gnaw through your shorts and will kick you in the nuts and will miss free throws intentionally to seal victories. And then there's Johnny Davis, who is the type of field mouse who wants to take on a hawk, Nick. That guy is changing everything, is what you told me right before this pod for Wisconsin basketball. So he is no normal field mouse, that one.
So, yeah, we'll talk about that in the Bucky Bugle. I'm so excited for this week's Bucky Bugle. Good friend of mine, Mr. Chris Wright, I will give you a shout out. But we'll definitely talk as we get into that Bucky Bugle, because this is a Badgers team that's unlike any we've seen in recent years, and that very much excites me. I don't know if we've ever seen a Badger team quite like this, and I'll tell you all when we get there how Johnny Davis has redefined what a Badgers basketball team can be. I'm super pumped about that. Another thing I'm super pumped about, John, as we mentioned earlier, next week, episode 100, something that I frankly never thought would ever happen. You and I started doing this, and we had a blast, and we just kept doing it every week. We just kept, hey, let's get together and chat some more. Let's get together and bring in a friend and talk Badgers, Bucks, Packers, Brewers when seasonally appropriate. And now we've done one thing before, and we did a giveaway. Next week, we have a super exciting giveaway. I cannot wait for this next one. I'm not going to give it all away. Yes, I am.
Give it away, Nick.
We will be giving away a custom pair of 100th episode commemorating Bucks Giannis Zoom Freak 3s.
For the W, Zoom Freak 3s.
We have our own official shoe now.
Custom designed.
Oh, I'm so pumped about it. I can't wait to show the world this design. It's basically everything that you and I have put into the podcast, exemplified in a shoe, I guess.
And I hope the person that wins the shoe, the lucky listener who wins the shoes.
And not only that,
two shoes.
Two shoes. Know. Yeah, not just one. They can wear the pair.
Yes.
And not only lucky, but I'm going to just put a little possible spoiler, and I'm going to say the person that will win these will not only be lucky, but they will also be smart.
And good.
Good. And good. And
they will
booed.
Exemplify to us the 3 E's of success, Nick. But I hope that they keep us posted on the whereabouts and the usage of these For the W Zoom Freak 3s, because we love to know what our listener base is up to. We love to stay involved and interactive. Or at least we love to tell people that we do. We don't necessarily have the best batting average on Twitter or Facebook, but if you're trying to get a hold of us, where can you find us, Nick? You can find us at podcastforthew@gmail.com.
That's probably like the one way that nobody utilizes.
No one emails us.
Reddit's like become like the best place. If you go to the Milwaukee Bucks Reddit, you can get a hold of John any time of the day.
I don't check the messages often, so just post on one of our posts and I'll like it and get back to you soon.
But more than anything, you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, if you want to really get some help from my wife Lydia, who does pretty much all our social, and then of course Twitter, which is probably the thing we do the least of, but we still do on occasion.
We're coming.
Yeah,
we're coming.
And of course, just a quick reminder, above all else, you can find us at forthew.buzzsprout.com, and that's the best way to get the latest episodes.
Number one way.
And now our YouTube channel is kicking off, so that's exciting too.
We're everywhere.
Man, it's super fun. I'm super happy, John, to be here once again.
Oh, one last thing.
Yes.
Shout out and thank you to MKE Milwaukee Lifestyle Magazine for featuring us in print, Nick.
That's right. We buried the lead.
We buried the lead.
Yeah, Milwaukee Lifestyle Magazine gave us a feature last week.
Like a little blurb about pods to listen to. We were the only sports podcast that I saw.
Yeah, and in fact, we'll be linking to that. Apparently, my wife has some connection to the author of that little segment there. So, that was super exciting. We were out. My wife and I were seeing American Underdog, the Kurt Warner movie, which I'm not gonna lie, and this is for everyone that's listening and watching. It's had so many opportunities to be a good movie, and it had some of the worst corny dialogue.
Kurt Warner's a pretty corny dude. No offense, Kurt Warner.
I'm not even putting this on Kurt. I'm putting this anyway. But anyway, so we get out of the movie, and my wife and I had our first date night in forever, and we come out, and she gets a text from her friend Elise, because you can't text during the movies.
No.
And apparently Elise came across a copy of this magazine in Milwaukee, and we were featured in it. So yeah, huge shout out to MKE Lifestyle for featuring us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Whoever the listener was that made that happen.
And we'll probably be doing some backlinking there. So
let us know.
Yeah, we're going to really work on that.
It.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you as always to all the listeners.
And I guess now that brings us to our next part of this podcast. Let's go, John, to the City of Champions.
Right past the big-ass flag.
MKE itself?
Absolutely, Nick. Straight down 43, past the big-ass flag.
Oh, because we're coming from up north.
Yes.
I was confused. I was like, how are we getting there?
Yep.
Well, I'll show you how right now.
And like the 2021 Milwaukee Bucks, we persevered.
I love this intro so much.
We kept the defensive pressure high. We just played to our strengths. We listened to Coach Bud, and we fucking grinded it out, Nick.
Drew Holiday has been excellent for our starting lineup.
He's a Giannis. He plays Giannis, and he's a Giannis. Their coach is still Mike Budenholzer, Nick.
Not surprised. Going to that last game in Game 6, I just felt deep within my soul, we've got this.
Now, Nick, you may say, was it really that lopsided? And Nick, I would say, fuck yeah, it was, man. The Bucks are champions of the fucking world.
And welcome once again to another installment of the Cream City Keys, where we talk all things Milwaukee Bucks, where we talk about the City of Champions, Milwaukee, the good land.
The gathering place by the waters, Nick, where all good vibes end up eventually.
Yeah, and if they don't go there, they started there.
Number one city, according to Twitter, in the United States.
And if you listen to Stephen A. Smith, you may be led astray, but I think even he has become a believer that Milwaukee is the best place in the world. And one of the reasons why is your Milwaukee Bucks, John.
Do you think Stephen A. listens to the pod on a regular enough basis?
I mean, clearly not with a take like that. I mean, we know he knows about Aaron Rodgers, the bad man.
Yes.
Other than that, he's severely lacking in his Wisconsin sports content.
It really does seem that way. And Stephen A., as always, will try to find time to squeeze you on the pod whenever you're available and we're available, and our legal team checks it out. We have full creative control.
I mean, and I know he got his start in
little
Philadelphia, but the Sixers do not match up with the Bucks this year.
No.
Especially once we get Brook back, because once that happens, not even Joel Embiid can save them because we are going to be so loaded. And that brings me to the thing I most wanted to talk about this week, John. We saw a player come to Milwaukee this week, or this season rather, who was unceremoniously let go this week. And I'm talking about, of course, Mr. Boogie himself.
The Oogie Boogie.
The Oogie Boogie, Demarcus Cousins, pretty much just let go. And that tells me that maybe we've got a shot at seeing Brook earlier than we had originally thought.
I think that, and I have always thought that Brook will be back sometime around the All-Star break, just doing a little bit of independent research, free thinking, Nick, and taking a look at what back injuries and back surgeries that are minor back surgeries, whether it's just like a slip disc or something like that. Like, yes, they are painful and everything like that, but there's usually like a 3-month to 4-month rehabilitation if everything goes well, if it's minor. And so and because I was hearing so much about how optimistic the Bucks were about him coming back, I started to kind of just superimpose that timeline onto the season, which brings him back like mid-February. I think there is another thing that should be stated about Boogie's release, which is that had he been held on to another day, his contract would have been fully guaranteed, I believe, through the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that was a part of it. Like, we always talk about Brian Gutekunst of the Packers as their GM and how he makes these shrewd financial decisions in addition to bringing talent in. And I think that's what John Horst was doing here. I think maybe this was the plan from the word go. And I'm not going to lie, Boogie played really well for us. Yeah. However, do we need him more than a few weeks, a month or so he was with the team? Maybe not. And I think that maybe he was considered a stopgap from the go. And I think we saw last week when we brought in Cornette, maybe that's like the next succession plan, dare I say, to bring up another series.
I think that, just filling that big man slot for 15 to 20 minutes a game.
Exactly.
Like if Bobby's there and if Giannis is there. Luke Cornette, to me, is like a much better like basketball fit than Boogie. Here's the thing with Boogie and what we talked about when we first signed him and why fans were optimistic and why some fans remained optimistic. But I was a bit lower on it than most people, I think, because
you were way lower than I thought you would even be. I thought you'd be way more pumped than you were. I was pretty high on it because he's a name,
Right. He definitely is a name, which is Frank Madden brought this up on the Locked On Bucks podcast that it was a different type of player than usual. We usually don't, as the Bucks, go for the fallen star type of guy. But the other thing with Boogie that I was primarily really kind of disappointed in, I think he had a shot to make the roster, and I just don't think he did. And the reason for that is he was shooting 26% from three. If you're going to shoot 26% from three, you need to have an elite skill somewhere else because that's such an important part of Mike Budenholzer's offense, and it always has been. Back to Al Horford, Pero Antic in Atlanta. He needs a shooting big man. He had Dwight Howard for one season, and it almost killed him, and he left Atlanta right after that. Brook Lopez, and then Bobby Portis, who's maybe the best three-point shooter in the league, percentage-wise over the last 2 years, both provide elite shooting from that 5 spot, which gives our whole transition defense a leg up. When you've got a 7-footer in the lane in a transition opportunity, you can't take it at Brook at the rim if you're a guard flying up the court or whatever, because he's starting 30 feet from the rim and just backpedaling, a few feet to get to the paint and block that shot. With a guy like Boogie, the effort necessarily wasn't as high as I would have thought a guy on a minimum contract playing for a deal would have been, but also Bud had to completely redo our defense because of his limitations. He played him more like the Nuggets played Jokic, which is trap the ball handler on the pick and roll and then pray that Boogie can get back to the rim by the time his guy is there. Usually what Bud likes to do is drop Bobby or Giannis or Brooke all the way down to the basket when the big man sets a screen, because it's like, it's more important to take away the rim. We saw with Boogie, he was doing a lot of trapping and stuff, which meant that Bud's original plan and system didn't work for him, which kind of was a bit of a red flag for me.
Yeah, I mean, and that makes perfect sense. The other thing too, I just like you said, his game didn't translate to Bud's kind of coaching style. I think Kornet is a more natural fit to that, and not that I think that Kornet's maybe a better center by any means, but he certainly fits that mold of a big man that can shoot the long range shot.
Totally.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to belabor the point and get too much on Boogie here, but I think we've kind of run its course there, and honestly, wish him well, and really glad for what he offered the Bucks for the games that he was here.
Absolutely, I think that he played admirably, got us a couple wins, especially against bad teams. He was a really perfect guy that we could plug in. That was a real rotation guy on most teams. Not us. We're the best team. But I think he just, like I said, I think it was him or Wes Matthews was going to get guaranteed. And after the way that Wes played, one of those two had to go, and we kept Wes. I mean,
West Side West
is now guaranteed through the end of the season. He'll be with us the rest of the way. So I think it came down to finances and also fit. But like you said, best to Boogie moving forward. Hope everything continues to trend in a positive direction for his career. He's really fallen on hard times the last couple years of his torn Achilles, etc. Good to see him back out there getting productive minutes on a good team. But Nick,
let's talk about the recent trends.
Let's talk about those.
Because, well, here's what I'm saying. And unfortunately, since we last spoke, we have lost 2 of 3. We're currently losing to the Hornets again. But we did have a really nice win on Friday against the Nets, which I think is probably more important than a 2-game series against the Hornets.
100% more important, Nick. Let's go through that game, because that nationally televised rematch, complete confrontation of the Titans of the East, was over by like halftime almost.
The immovable object and the irresistible force
are
colliding.
the same team,
and it's both us.
Both are us, and we just bulldoze Brooklyn in Brooklyn. So some quick stats on that game, Nick. The 4 factors, which are pace, effective field goal percentage, turnover percentage, offensive rebounding percentage, and free throw versus field goal attempts, which is usually a really good way to indicate who's going to win a game if you average those out. Bucks won the effective field goal percentage by a mile, won the turnover percentage as well, which is a little bit, we've been pretty lax in the turnover department this season. Brooklyn won offensive rebounding percentage, surprisingly, and the free throw to field goal attempts, which is unsurprising because they have James Harden, who just likes to foul bait the whole time.
I mean, and honestly, the refs and the rules have caught up to James Harden. You know, this is a guy that basically spent. I feel like Chris Collins. There's a guy. There's a guy. Well, but like, to be honest, James Harden's whole career has been, like you say, foul baiting. He baited those fouls for years. I mean, even in this game, I mean, he had a decent game: 9 rebounds, 7 assists, 16 points. We're at the point now where the NBA caught on and they changed the rules specifically for James Harden. They should have just called it the James Harden rule. But the biggest part to me,
he's so butthurt about it too.
Well, and that's their thing, is like, was the style in which he played, although it was successful for him, and I will never, say that it wasn't. Was that good for the sport of basketball? Absolutely not. It slowed the game down. It made it more boring, and it made it to where players weren't actually playing. Like they always talk about. You hear it more as a football adage, but let the players play. And really, it turned into a thing where it was like, no, Harden just slowed up the pace of the game.
Yeah, let James Harden play.
Yeah, to the point where it became, it was laughable. It really was laughable. So I love seeing the 16-point James Harden that we have now.
We bulldozed him, Nick. And a notable thing to keep in mind for this game is they didn't play Blake Griffin. They barely played LaMarcus Aldridge, and they didn't play Paul Millsap at all. It was all Nick Claxton for the most part at the 5.
Yep.
So last year in the playoffs, Bobby got a lot of DNPs against Brooklyn. He did not play.
He didn't play the whole
like,
series, did he?
I think he played the first 2 games and then was out.
So, because for me, like when I remember the series in my mind, I don't remember him playing at all.
No, he didn't play in any part that a Bucks fan would ever want to remember.
That's right, because that was a rough series at points.
It really was. It
Galvanizing.
Was but that was because they had Blake Griffin and they had Kevin Durant as their front court. And so you put Blake on Giannis, you put KD kind of as this rover, this free safety off of Brook Lopez. Now, Brook Lopez 8 in that series. He, as the Nets' all-time leading scorer, was a real fitting guy to hit the free throws to put them away in Game 7, I thought. Mm-hmm. But he had a great series, as he always does. He's the most underrated player in the NBA now that people know who Chris Middleton is.
Right.
And I can't wait for him to come back. But without him, I was a little bit interested to see what do we look like against the Nets, who were able to feast at the rim whenever he was off the court last season. Well, by taking their big guys out, we didn't really get to find that out. And I think there was some gamesmanship by Steve Nash going on there.
Absolutely.
Because those 3 guys were all literally signed to make sure that the Nets had an answer for Giannis.
Yeah.
And none of them
still
played.
Didn't.
none of them played. So that tells me that there's a little bit of, like I said, tomfoolery going on with old Esteban Nash. But, Nick, the way that we beat the crap out of them cannot be understated. We did not have Drew Holiday. It was very similar to our Game 3 victory over them, except for far less close. We've gotten very comfortable winning this way. It was Chris and Giannis. And it was Chris and Giannis 2-man game. It was Chris and Giannis ISO. One thing that people don't remember about that Brooklyn series is that it got dragged to the mud and that the best isolation team in basketball won. And that team is the Milwaukee Bucks, not the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you go by the numbers anyway.
If you go by the way it finished.
Points per possession, victory in general. The Bucks have crept unannounced throughout most of the NBA media's megaphones into the level of all-time great one-on-one scoring teams. And I just think that by laying the smackdown to Brooklyn, it really got me thinking about who can beat us, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. It's like, kind of like what you were saying about the Packers earlier. The Packers can play an average game and still pull out a victory, and that's really the same exact thing with these Bucks, like you mentioned. Just to do a little stat check, I just had to look it up. Bobby Portis played basically 17 minutes the first 2 games of that series, 11 minutes the second 2 games of that series, and then did not play the last 3 games of that series. Yeah. But yeah, I had to check that out for my own good. But yeah, I mean, this is a Bucks team that can compete with anybody. And frankly, it's going to take a team playing at their best for a full series to beat this Bucks squad.
Absolutely, because we have 2 All-Stars, I think, for sure.
At least.
In Giannis and Drew Holiday. But, Nick, one thing I did want to do, I don't think we're going to get 4 All-Stars, and I really don't think we're going to get 3. I think some stupid Celtic or Atlanta Hawk on these or Nick on some average-ass team is going to get in over one of...
Or a Heat.
Or a Heat.
I mean, and then you look at like
a BTU. You
look at like Charlotte right now. I mean, like the balls are all over the place now between that and Chicago. Those guys will get hype score.
Chicago's going to have a couple guys, DeRozan and Levine maybe. They've been playing really well. We haven't played them yet. I'm excited for that. But
that's going to be really good.
I think that a discussion between Chris, because Marty texted me last week.
Oh, I love Marty.
Friend of the pod,
We haven't talked about Marty on the pod in a while.
A mad Marty, who's now like the most optimistic and like bubbly Bucks fan of all time after our entire lives of just yelling at me about how bad they were.
He's become a surprisingly chill-ass dude.
Yeah,
shout out to Marty.
Did not see that coming.
We should bring him back for episode 100.
We should. Maybe, yeah, that'd be great.
I bet you he'd come on.
So he texted me, Bobby should be an all-star. He texted me, Bobby Portis is an all-star. And I was like, what?
Surprisingly, though.
I was like, over Chris? And so I've pulled up, and I'm kind of surprised by how not crazy that is. Now, I don't think it should happen. I think Chris should get in. I think it should be Chris, Giannis, and Drew. They won the championship. I mean, that's the three dudes.
It depends if he's Moist Jordan or not.
Yes. Chris, though, has had a significantly down year by his standards, and Bobby is having his career season. And so I pulled up a little player comparison, just their normal traditional stats. You've got Middleton at 18.8 points per game. Bobby's at 15.7. Rebounds. Bobby's at 9.2. And Chris is at 5.5. Assists, you've got Chris at 5.1 and Bobby only at 1.3. We are the only team in the NBA still to have 3 players averaging 5 or more assists. But traditional stats, I don't know, 18, 5, and 5 versus 15, 9, and 1. I think that advantage goes Chris, to me. But when you start looking at like the on-off numbers and the net ratings of these dudes, like Bobby Portis is at an effective field goal percentage of 56%. So basically 56% of the time that he shoots, we get a bucket. That's 2 points. Chris is at 50, 3-point percentage. I mean, you've got a guy in Bobby Portis who is a 3-point marksman, maybe the best 3-point shooter in the league, Nick. He's shooting like 36% after shooting 47% last year, and he's been on a real upswing. Nick, Chris, still at about 38%. That's down for him. He's usually over 40. I just am blown away by how close that is. Do you have a pick between Chris and Bobby? Who should go to the All-Star game as our third All-Star?
I think either of those guys has a claim. And I mean, Bobby's played exceptionally well. Chris has played exceptionally subpar for what we're used to from Chris. However, I will say this. This is why we have the team that we have. I don't think that any of these guys are meant to be that stud number 3. Honestly, when you look at the way the team is constructed, we've basically done it with a variety of cast throughout the whole season. And I think the plan in place is that that's what's going to kind of go on as the year goes on. Now, we know what we have in Giannis. I think we expect, if I'm John Horst as I'm putting this team together, I expect that, you're going to get that number 2 out of either Chris or Drew any given night. But you've got a lot of great role players, guys like Bobby. We've seen Grayson Allen play out of his gourd at times. We've seen even Boogie, when he was here, played some great minutes. So I think the whole point of this team is almost like they say any given Sunday for football. This is any given night with these guys. Yes. We know Giannis is going to kick in 30, 40 points, but the rest of the guys, that's a great supporting cast. In
26 minutes, he dropped like 31
Giannis
points
is a sick fuck, dude.
He's the best player I've ever seen play basketball.
I'm going to just say this, and this might sound crazy about Giannis. He's, dare I say, freaky.
He's freaky. He's absolutely freaky, Nick.
And that's one of the maxims of this podcast is stay freaky.
Stay
34.
freaky. Nick, all that talk about James Harden got me thinking, because James Harden sucks. And when he lost the MVP to Giannis, his general manager, Daryl Morey, and them, they were tweeting about how it was a steal. It was like, stop the steal before stop the steal. It was like James Harden really deserves all these, they were leaking all these stats that they had on an internal level that were like favorable to James Harden. James Harden even said, directed at Giannis, but not naming Giannis, that all some players do is run and dunk. Anybody can do that. You have to have skill to do what I do. Well, Nick, that got me thinking, because Brooklyn no longer scares me at all. But I think about teams that do, and I think about players that do. And a guy just came back last night.
I know where this is going.
In Klay Thompson.
And this is going to what we've this is, I think, the confrontation that we've been waiting for.
All season.
And not even just this season.
Right.
I mean, when we look at the most recent history of the Warriors, now, this is a team that's been one of the elite squads over the past 5 years or so. And honestly, a historic franchise in some ways in some of the seasons that they've had. And with the injuries they had last year, we have not really seen the confrontation that we may see this week.
Nick, it's been a long time since we've had a chance to play Draymond, Steph, and Klay. in a game. And there are a lot of points that come to my mind when I think about the Bucks versus the Warriors. 1971, our only championship, won against the San Francisco Warriors.
Yeah.
Okay. The Monte Ellis, Andrew Bogut trade, when Golden State offered us either Monte or Steph, and we took Monte at the time because Steph had ankle injuries. Okay. There is also, after the Warriors won their first championship, they started the next season 24-0 for the longest winning streak to start a season in NBA history, until they came one night to a stadium where our entire crazy Squad 6 section had printed 24-1 t-shirts. And Greg Monroe, Michael Carter Williams, Giannis, and Chris took down the reigning champions. And I believe OJ Mayo was there as well.
Sounds about right. Juice.
Nick, Steph Curry mentioned that game on a podcast with Bill Simmons a couple of years ago about one of his favorite and hardest places to play and like most difficult teams that are coming up, the Bucks. Kevin Durant, when he was a member of the Warriors, mentioned Giannis as having an unseeable ceiling that he can be as good as anybody ever.
Well, not to mention the tie of Steph's father, Del Curry, who taught this man, Ray Allen, how to shoot a killer three, a man whose record Steph just surpassed. There's a lot of really cool ties between Steph and Milwaukee, and
the Warriors and the Bucks as well.
Absolutely. There's a lot to take from this, especially as it's become like a resurgence over the last few years of two teams that laid dormant for decades.
Well, and so the Warriors go on their winning championship streak when they get Kevin Durant. They beat LeBron, and then so we missed our finals against them in 2019 when we lost to the Raptors. And we were up 2-0, went to overtime in Game 3. We win Game 3. We go to play the Warriors, the team that we are destined to play in the finals, I would say. And we blow our opportunity, right? Then there is last season. Steph and Draymond barely missed the playoffs last season as the 8th seed because Steph was injured for much of the year.
Yep.
Well, so we got our championship. This, to me, is a rivalry in the making that could make up, I would say, like Shaq and Duncan in the mid or late 90s through the 2010s appeared in, I think it's 11 of 12 NBA finals. One of those two appeared. I think there will be a similar run between the Warriors and the Bucks over this next 5-6 years, because we're already a couple years in now of having one of those two in the finals other than the Lakers year. And that's the bubble, and we don't talk about that because it was fake. But Warriors come in with the number one defense in the NBA by a mile with a bullet. They come in with an offense that started top 5, is now slumping, is now number 10 in offensive rating, but they just added Klay Thompson, who dunked all over the Cleveland front court yesterday in his first game back from the subtle and slight injury combo of the Achilles tear and the ACL tear in different legs. He looks back. I mean, he's a guy, he's just like Ray Allen, where it's like his shot is never going to be broken, you know? But the athleticism was a little scary to see. But Nick, we do play the Warriors Thursday, January 13th, national TV, game of the year, if you're asking me. I might just have to get tickets and go to this game.
That would be pretty cool. I'll tell you this. It looks like the Bucks are going to lose another one to the Hornets here tonight. We are down 4 with roughly 40 seconds remaining.
I trust us.
I would like to trust us. They lost one already. We will see how that shakes out.
Down 2 now.
As you mentioned, there we go. As you mentioned, Thursday night we play the Warriors. We will see the Toronto Raptors once again coming to Milwaukee. And then around the time we're recording once again, we'll be going to Atlanta. That's where the players play, and we'll see that game. And just a few days off of that, John, not too much longer. You and I will be attending Friday night, January the 28th, 9 p.m. start for Knicks Bucks. I'm so pumped for that one. We'll have to talk about that for episode 100 maybe. I don't know. That's next week Friday. So a lot of excitement there.
Absolutely.
Is that next week Friday?
Nope.
The following week.
Yep. It's 18 days from now.
18 days from now, sir. Yes.
Not probably 17 days for you, the listener.
Yeah, that's right. Good point. All right. So, anything else to add on Bucks? Because we've gone so long. We're almost like an hour in on the pod.
We're just chatting, man. My bad.
A couple chatty Cathys over here.
Yeah. Well, your grandma called, your dad called. We were chatting with them. They got me in the chatty mood.
It's been a fun night. We've talked to everybody.
Yeah, talking to everybody.
We'll have to have Carol on the pod.
Dante and Pat are back. Grayson get well soon. Looking forward to a full strength roster this Thursday.
All right, so let's move right on ahead. Let's take the trip 94. I'm definitely stopping for cream puffs at the Pine Cone in Johnson Creek. And then when we get there, I want to tell you why Johnny Davis is single-handedly changing Badger basketball forever. We'll see you there. The Bucky Bugle, the school newspaper of For the W.
The Bucky Bugle, the first unadmitted Wisconsin student newspaper of note.
Well, one day, we decided it was time to get deep undercover for some Wisconsin college sleuthin' and truthin'.
Wait, are those Brad Davidson's footprints on that pair of testicles?
Sounds like Brad Davison is afoot.
Wait, is that Greg Gard in this rural, small Minnesota town?
A recruiting hotbed.
Wait, is that Shaka Smart leering down from the Fiserv Forum rafters?
I see he's back on this side of the Mississippi.
College basketball coverage on For the W, a Wisconsin sports podcast brought to you by the Bucky Bugle.
Sleuthin' and truthin'? The Bucky
Nick!
Bugle. Hey, John. Good to see you.
You didn't see me over here. I was over here hiding in the bushes.
Well, that's because you were afraid that Brad Davison was going to kick you in the balls.
Yeah, you got to wear a cup around that one, Nick.
He's the Draymond Green of the Wisconsin Badgers.
No. Though I have compared him to him, and I will say Draymond's scoring has really dipped, which does kind of like
put him in the same conversation. And not only that, but the testicle kicking is, these guys have both been, I don't know who teaches that.
Like a magnet to a sperm, Just
maybe Tom Izzo is doing like a basketball camp. Brad Davison made it up to the UP, and Izzo was like, this is how you really slap a sack. So as we get in, and maybe you and I need to do some more deep dive investigating on this. As we stand right now.
How are we going to do that? What are we going to be investigating, Nick? Let's play this out.
Let's go and ask Tom Izzo. Let's go to the UP. We know he's from Iron Mountain.
I'm not having to like really check in on like physical testicles. I might be down.
I'm
probably not down, but
I'm not confirming or denying that we won't have to do that.
I don't want to see any more testicles than my own, Nick.
Well, some people just care more about the truth than others, John. And
that's true. That's true.
So I think the key lies in Iron Mountain, Michigan.
That's part of the UP, which is actually bullshit to call it Michigan. Sorry to my friends that are Yoopers. I know you guys like love Michigan.
How many Yooper friends do you really have?
I have a few Yooper friends.
Really?
Yes, and they love the UP and Michigan. And it's the dumbest shit. That is never. I mean, I don't know how Michigan ended up weaseling that out. Other than that, it was all Michigan territory before, and Wisconsin was like segmented out of that. But like bullshit. That's how I feel about it.
That's a lot to take. And just like that, I hope
I'm storming the UP one day.
I hope you're comfortable, because right now, man, the Bucks are down 7 seconds. They're down 2 to the Hornets, 99 to 101.
Do they have the ball?
7 seconds remain. We've moved on to the Bugle, so we'll find out, I guess.
All right, yeah, we'll watch it in the like show notes or whatever.
So since we last spoke to you, the Badgers, we were really pumped. We were flying high after that victory over Purdue. And that success has just continued. We beat Iowa in a game that, once again, the Badgers 87 points. We're a team that puts up a lot of points. Now, yesterday, we did play against Maryland, a team that's pretty good on the basketball court, a team that reminds us only on the basketball court why they were brought into the Big Ten.
Sweet football helmets, but also like ACC football helmets.
Yeah, they're perfect for the ACC, but in basketball...
They're literally on the Atlantic coast.
But yeah, but in basketball, they I guess are okay for us. We had a really huge lead in that game.
We had no business giving that lead away.
No, but we did. But we still won.
We did.
And that sealed us with a 13th overall ranking. The Badgers are on the tongue of every single sports pundit following college basketball, the same way that Brad Davison's foot is. Anyway, I digress. We have some excitement this week, John, because on Thursday we have Ohio State, 16th overall.
Rematch.
This is going to be a good game.
Vengeance.
Revenge.
I love the Grateful Red. I love Jerry Garcia's influence on Badger basketball fandom culture, and I hope everybody comes really, really correct and very loud and proud this Thursday at the Kohl Center.
I mean, there's no other way that they come. Title of your sex tape? So let's get back to this Wisconsin Badgers team, because I do want to talk, as we mentioned earlier, Johnny Davis is a stud. I'm going to get really into Johnny Davis in this week's Bucky Bugle, because I like to sleuth and I like to truth, John. But a guy that I talked about a lot last season has really started to come to the fore. The W. Tyler Wall. Tyler Wall against Iowa, 16 points, 9 rebounds. He's establishing himself as a big man that can actually rebound on this team, because up to that point, Johnny Davis has been our top rebounder. Tyler Wall, I think, he's kind of, I don't want to say he's taking any minutes from Steven Crowell, because we know they're both, they're each 2/5 of the 5 Tigers. Mm-hmm. But then not only did Tyler Wall play pretty admirably in that one, he came back against Maryland and scored another 21 for us. But what I do want to talk about, and let's get back to Johnny Davis. Mm-hmm. Johnny Davis is reinventing Badger basketball. And there's always been this idea that Badger basketball was a team sport, very much still is. It was always kind of thought that if you were a player, if you were a shooter, if you were a scorer, if you were Tyler Hero, you didn't want to come and play for the Badgers. If you were Diamond Stone, you didn't want to come and play for the Badgers, because somehow you would be lost in the shuffle of a team that passes the ball and creates opportunities for the open man. Johnny Davis is single-handedly proving that in this Badgers team, in this contemporary style that they play, you can be a scorer, you can be a shooter, you can be a stud, and you can stand out and still win a bunch of games on this Badger team. And that's what Johnny Davis is proving. He's a complete player. He's a complete scorer. He's probably not going to be a Badger long. I think he is going to see.
He should go to the draft next year.
He would be stupid not to.
I mean, he is what every team is, especially after the rise of Devin Booker.
Yeah.
A 6'5", 200-pound guard who can create for himself and others off the dribble and drill shots in people's faces, and is already an NBA caliber athlete, and not just from a running and jumping perspective, but from a physical makeup perspective. Like I said, 200 pounds, that's to start the year. As we know in Wisconsin, Aldo didn't write about this, but through the winter months, we tend to put on a couple here, He would have
written about it if he had seen Johnny Davis play.
Well, Johnny Davis averaging 22 points, 7.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists on 33% three-point shooting, 45% field goal percentage, 80% from the line, and a player efficiency rating of 28.5, which puts him in a Devin Booker type role as far as what he is bringing to the game from an efficiency standpoint for his team. I mean, he is balling. But this last game against Maryland, for not the first time all season, but what was really nice to see is he started slumping in the second half.
Yeah.
And he missed a bunch of shots. He was 1 for 7 from deep on the game, and that one make came in the first half. he still had 7 rebounds, but only 1 assist, 3 turnovers. But the guy that we've been waiting all season for to come up and really have a big game. We thought he would be competing for second or first in points per game this year when we did our season preview. Tyler Wall finally broke out for 21 points, 8 for 12 from the field, 5 for 5 from the free throw line, 2 assists, a block, and the team really rallied around Johnny Davis, who was struggling to come through for a victory that we really had no business losing, but we found ourselves in a position where we possibly could.
Yeah, and you're starting to wonder because as we've seen this team take shape, I mean, I think we know who our 3 guards are. We're going to see Davison, Davis, and Hepburn. And Hepburn does add, and I'm not going to mince words here, elite defensive presence to this team. He's definitely has that skill set, kind of a Mike Kelly mold there. In some ways,
he's better than Mike Kelly, I think.
He's definitely more athletic than Mike Kelly.
Yeah, he's a shutdown. Defensive player. You look at the opponent's guards, and it's like they just shoot 6 for 16 against him, 1 for 5 against him all the time.
Yeah, and looking at our forwards, though, you start to wonder. So we've got a lot of big guys. Tyler Wall and Stephen Crowell are 2 of our 5 Tigers, but also. Dude, Chris Vogt's starting to get some playing time there, and I think he kind of brings that defensive presence as well, spells some minutes for both of these guys. And, honestly, I really think this is a team, and when the season started, I think I said 4 seed was their ceiling. They're definitely right on the cusp right now. Right now, if the tournament started today, I think they would be a 3 or a 4 seed, but I don't want to mince words here, and I don't want to go ahead and make some bold proclamation, but they could be even better than I initially had thought. And we'll see how they kind of challenge, especially when you talk about, we're talking about the year that Johnny Davis is having. This is against elite competition. The Big Ten is probably the cream of the crop for basketball right now in the NCAA. We've got a lot of great teams now. It'll be interesting because we'll have matchups with Michigan State coming up. There's going to be a lot to kind of take away from these next bunch of weeks and getting an idea of what this team is really made of. So, I mean, like I say, by the time we get to Friday, January 21st, when we play Michigan State, I mean, we're going to have played against a number of ranked teams from our conference between Purdue, Ohio State, Michigan State, obviously. We also have a really nice win on paper against Houston. The only ranked team that's beat us up to this point, other than Ohio State, was that game against Providence. They're currently ranked 23rd. So we have done it against some really great competition. It's just going to be really fun, I think, to see what this team is made of as we get further down the line.
I want to take you back to the Chris Vogt comment.
Yeah.
So that is something we talked about last week, and the trend has continued and it's become really one guy that he's taking minutes from, and it's Stephen Crowell. In this most recent Maryland matchup, again, the minutes are almost even now. Chris Vogt at 17, Stephen Crowell at 22. Now, Stephen Crowell is consistently getting in foul trouble, but the thing with Chris Vogt is he brings size and defense that we talked about in the season preview as a potential because we knew nothing about most of these guys. Chris Vogt was a transfer student as a fifth-year senior. We talked about the possibility that he could maybe, fill in if things don't go so well for Stephen Crowell, one of our big guys. Well, he is playing really well, and he played really well against Purdue, and he played really well against in every spot minute that he's gotten this season, and he just keeps getting more minutes. Bold prediction, I should have said it in the campfire, put it in the Dutch oven for hot takes. I think Chris Vogt will be our starting center, and Stephen Crowell will come off the bench as an offensive spark plug style scorer for our second unit by the time we reach the NCAA tournament.
I still don't necessarily agree. I do think he's played very well, but I think we'll probably still keep Crowell there. I'm either way excited to see how it shakes out, and frankly, I'm fine with either of those guys. Neither of those guys in that starting role upsets me. And maybe that's the team aspect that we can take from this Badger team. I also wonder how much of a difference it's made to have Brad Davison, the Van Wilder of UW athletics, here for another season, because he does add a few nice points. I mean, he's usually in double digits. He's usually, a foot. And
Yes.
And I don't know. This is a really cool, well-rounded team. And I think for you and I, exciting how surprising it's been, because we didn't expect this.
Yes. I mean, so I was a little higher on their ceiling to start the season because of our size and because of the unknown nature of our roster construction. I thought that our ceiling, where you're starting to get to now, is kind of where I started from, which is possibly a 1 or 2 seed even. And what has really propelled that is somebody popped, Johnny Davis, obviously. And like I said, the size and the defensive ability of this team, we can match up athletically against most teams. Chucky Hepburn's another great example of a guy that can be out there against an elite guy across from him and really have an impact positively on the game. And that's why I think Chris Vogt will overtake Steven Krall, is because of the need for that identity to be there from the opening tip for this team against elite competition. But Nick, you talked about a 4 or a 3 seed. We're currently 13th in the country, which according to the AP and coaches poll, right? So that puts us actually right at a 3 seed, right? 3 or 4?
Yeah, it's like we would be like the second to last 3 seed.
Well, so I took a look at Pomeroy college basketball rankings, which is kenpom.com, which is a very accurate predictor of tournament seeding and rankings. I also looked at T-Rank at Bart Torvik, BartTorvik.com, another very accurate predictor. And Nick, some shit pissed me off when I looked at these websites, because T-Rank has us listed at 29th and KenPom at 30th. But then I was like, wait, we've played a really hard schedule. What happens if I narrow that field to just the top 64 teams for the T-Rank? We all of a sudden jump up to 19th when you narrow the field to only games against top 64 teams, so the teams that allegedly would make the tournament. We are 19th. And then when you shrink it even further, against the top 25 teams, our T-Rank is 8th, which would put us at a 2 seed. Now, I think it's shameful shit that they have us that low, Nick. I think we've only lost twice, and that one was a very close game against a Providence team that's very good, and one was our first interconference game on the road. That Ohio State loss is really lingering in the minds of these computers that are coming up with these rankings. But the people that have watched this team obviously have a higher esteem of them. They are ranking them 13th. Nick, I think that this team has the ability to still be a 1 seed if we can pull it together. And I think a 3 seed needs to be the benchmark that we set our expectations towards.
And I hear where you're going.
Assuming no injuries, because Johnny Davis is just, it's like you said, he changes everything. He's just that bright of a star.
Well, and I think ultimately, when you look at the way this team has played, and you and I talked about this, there was a lot of question marks on this squad coming into the year. A lot of underclassmen. I mean, it's like Brad Davison, the Van Wilder of UW Sports, and then everybody else who was kind of an unknown. We knew kind of Johnny Davis would be good.
Tyler Wall.
Yeah, we knew Tyler Wall was a pretty good reserve player. That Ohio State was a big loss, and I think it does linger because we did lose by 18 points.
Sure.
But ultimately, we really have the opportunity here that we can write our own destiny. This isn't like the Badger basketball or Badger football season we just saw, where we're playing a lot of unranked teams and we just got to kind of win out. I mean, we're going to have real tests. We already talked about Ohio State. We already talked about Michigan State. We're playing them twice still. We're going to be playing against Illinois. We're going there this year.
Cockburn got dunked on.
Cockburn, man, he was burning up in that game. And, for those that are a little sensitive, you might want to put some ointment on it.
Yep, absolutely. If it's a little red, just,
But I'll say this. By the time we get to February 8th when we play Michigan State in Michigan State. After that point, we only have one remaining game against a currently ranked team, and that's a few weeks later, March 1st, when Purdue comes to the Kohl Center. Mm-hmm. I think by this point, by that time we play Michigan State, we're really going to know how good is this team. Is this a team that, and I'm going to say that our floor has risen dramatically. Like, I think at worst, it maybe a 7th seed if everything goes terribly for us. But like you say, we could be a 1 or 2 seed, and I think we'll know pretty well what we've got going by the time we play Tom Izzo's squad for the second time, and really get a good glimpse with our magnifying glasses to see whose feet prints are on these sacks.
Absolutely. Did you do a breakdown of the schedule coming up with? So we've got from now until that Michigan State game, we've got Ohio State at home. We are at Northwestern. Trap game, gentlemen. We are home against Michigan State. We are at Nebraska. Trap. Minnesota at home. At Illinois. That's going to be a tough one, though. Illinois is really kind of fallen on hard times as far as their basketball team. They're unranked
and
now.
We have some, on this one, they've got them ranked 25th. So they're right on the cusp of ranking.
They were like top 10, and they've got Cockburn.
And not only do they have Cockburn, but we've got some guys that may be able to neutralize that Cockburn as well.
Well, that's always a welcome thing.
I mean, size knows size, and how do you beat Cockburn size, but with, wall size?
Slow and persistently.
Yeah. And then, of course, after that, we have Penn State coming to the Kohl Center.
Trap! Can anybody tell them, get the message to them, trap?
And it may be a trap, but
that's
back
a trap.
off. We'll take you on.
All right.
We're headstrong to take on anyone. And then after that,
trapped.
Close. And after that, then we have that very much mentioned Michigan State visit.
Absolutely.
To the state of Michigan, which is
East Lansing.
Yeah, interesting stuff coming up. I'm pumped for some more Badger basketball. This is a team that has surpassed my expectations.
Yep, and it's squarely fallen within my wildly optimistic ones.
Yeah, very much.
I was super high on Chucky Hepburn. I was super high on Stephen Krall, and I was super high on Chris Vogt, and I was basing it on nothing other than like a fan-sided article.
You set your sights in a very focused area, much like Brad Davison winding up that.
I got to go listen to that episode, our preview, because it's wild that we even did one because no one knew shit. But also, Nick, I do have written down on my sheet here, I owe him an apology. Greg Gard has been coaching his pants off this season. And
Brad Davison is a big fan of that.
Right. And Brad Davison intentionally missing the free throw at the end of the game against Maryland after unintentionally missing the first one, which was like, come on, Brad. But Greg Gard is coaching his pants off. He's being flexible with a guy like Johnny Davis and really centering an offense around a heliocentric star like that. And he's showing himself to be flexible and adaptable in ways that I did not think he was. And like I said, he's going to be here forever, I think. I think he's just going to be our basketball coach forever. And all the shit we talked at the beginning of last season through the beginning of this season is all going to just be rendered irrelevant by his excellent coaching. So I just want to be able to hop on the Greg Gard bandwagon soon. So I just wanted to get this apology to him out of the way so that way I can clear the runway and clear myself of baggage that I would need to bring onto the bandwagon with me. I'm not saying I'm on it yet, but I think I might believe in Greg Gard as a coach.
Well, I would say that's fucking stupid, John. And that's why we put the disclaimer at the beginning of the episode. I am never ready to give Greg Gard the benefit of the doubt, but they're playing really well.
They sure
I
are.
hope it continues. I am going to knock on wood very hardly because I think you may have jinxed us here tonight. However, I have nothing else to add. I want to get to the transmission. This episode has gone so long already, and we got a lot of Packers to talk about.
Let's go.
All right, man. I'll see you there. I forgot my 3 players. I'm going to be spitballing this.
Me too. You're now listening to Titletown Transmission, the unauthorized and underground radio of the Green Bay Packers.
For the W presents the story of a team that grew out of a small port town.
80,000 tailgaters every Sunday.
Statues of legendary coaches, Vince Lombardi and Curly Lambeau, welcome those fans.
Owned by the citizens of every county in the state of Wisconsin.
Tyler Davis,
Jamal Williams.
Tyler Summers,
Jamal Williams.
Tyler Lancaster.
Jamal Williams.
We said all players that suck.
Nick, mine's not even a Packer anymore, but I just love Jamal Williams.
Did you see him high-fiving our players as they came out of the tunnel?
Yes, and that's why he got 3 mentions. The first player ever to get the triple crown on the transmission from me, Nick. Jamal Williams, you are a joy. You are a lovely, lovely person, and I want you to be a Packer again so badly.
I mean, at this rate, with the way that A.J. Dillon is playing, and honestly, with the way that Patrick Taylor played in some spot duty, I don't know.
Patrick Taylor looks good.
Dude, he does look good. And you and I kind of talked about him. And now, if you listen back to episode 1, I believe it was, All You Need Is Love, we did talk about him as an undrafted free agent that had put together some really nice tape.
Yes.
And frankly, I got to the point where I thought, yeah, we might never see this guy make a roster even. But man, he really showed what he was made of in this like sort of impromptu preseason game that we had here this week.
It was a trash game.
You know, here's what I'll say about it. It was not good in the sense of being meaningful.
No.
But it certainly was a fun game to watch. And especially if you were a Lions fan, dude, this was the Lions Super Bowl. They're still cheering over there. And at this point, can you blame them? They're the second best team in the NFC North right now.
I love whenever there is an organizational impetus to lose. And as there was in this game for the Lions, if they lose, they solidify their standing as the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. And I love when the players who don't give a shit about your draft pick next year, they're going to be fighting for jobs for NFL teams, maybe your NFL team next year, just go out there and fuck it all up. And that's exactly what the Lions did. They went out there and won the game. They've won 3 out of their last, 5? To like completely dash ownership and their front office's hopes of getting the number 1 seed in the NFL draft. Exciting stuff from Detroit.
And honestly, I don't know that the number 1 pick really makes any difference anymore. I mean, you're picking in the top 5. You've got a shot at an elite player. Did Trevor Lawrence really make a difference for Jacksonville this year? They probably would have been better off with Gardner Minshew. However, that's just a crappy team. But I will say this about the Lions. Dude, Dan Campbell has these guys ready to play. Now, that guy's got an edge. I'm not going to lie, though.
I've heard a lot of this. I completely disagree. I think Dan Campbell sucks.
And more to the point, I think he's good at getting players hyped.
Maybe. Yeah.
I mean,
not for the first 13 weeks or whatever.
I mean, they were hyped all season. There's just not a lot of talent on that roster. I mean, more to the point, though, yeah, Dan Campbell, oh, great. He gets guys really hyped. He doesn't have Matt LaFleur is a strategist. But I'll say this, like, getting people in Detroit to believe, that's a feat. That's a serious feat.
And people in Detroit, like, do believe. And there are a lot of people, like, singing his praises. Whether I was listening to a Detroit Lions podcast, they love him. They are super excited that he's going to be sticking around. You've got, I think, like, a couple guys on ESPN, I think it was Rappaport or something that was talking about him. And it's like everybody is very high on him. And I do agree that they were not the worst, like, 13-loss team I've ever seen. But they were not good at any point in this season.
I mean, they played spirited football. That's about all I can say. Also a team decimated by injuries. They're probably better than the Bears and the Vikings at this point, if only for the fact that they have a front office. The Bears and the Vikings now, obviously we knew Minnesota, it could happen. We saw Mike Zimmer kind of struggle, and I think for me, I'm actually really relieved to see him go because I think he was really good for the Vikings, and I think they played really well against the Packers. I'm actually kind of relieved to see him and Spielman going, especially when you consider that Zimmer averaged 9 wins a season.
I can't believe they got rid of Nagy, personally.
Wait. Okay, so you're talking about the Bears now.
Yes.
So, let's not confuse people.
But Matt Nagy came, But Matt Nagy came to, because he just got let go too, right?
Well, here's the thing. When you own a professional sports team, as Aaron Rodgers does, you occasionally have to make the tough decisions. And I'm sure it's hard for Aaron today to be sitting there. He had to
have the tough talks.
He had to have the tough talks. He had to say, hey,
he's moving the team to Arlington Heights. He's like, guys, to the mayor of Chicago, sorry, you're fired. To Matt Nagy, sorry, you're fired. I own you. Oh, man. Wild stuff.
But yeah, I mean, I wasn't surprised by that. I was more surprised by Zimmer than Nagy, if I'm being honest with you, if only for the fact that Zimmer's had more sustained success. But I think it leaves the door open that the Lions can have a shot to finally be the number 2 team in this division.
Well, here's one thing I would like to say.
All right.
And this may be a Big Ten bias, but what I was going to say about the number 1 pick, Aiden Hutchinson, to me, from Michigan, looks like one of those generational dudes.
He looks like a stud. He reminds me a lot of like one of the Bosas.
He reminds me a lot of like a Watt.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say those guys are all kind of cut from that same cloth.
Yeah. And you got to stay within the same race when comparing players as a general rule. So that's why we did that.
Oh, but you do? No. I was thinking like Big Ten, strong defensive ends. Like that's where I was going. I really don't even.
I didn't either with the Watt thing. But the reason I say that, and there are other players like this as well. Kenny Clark's a perfect example. Those guys that have that wingspan. I mean, he's got like a 7-foot wingspan, and he just like J.J. Watt, he's able to keep guys so far away from him at 6'6". Right up there on the edge. He's a 4-3 end. He's a 3-4, whatever you want to do with him.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to mention Aiden Hutchinson, and I think he's just that much better, and that's why I was laughing at Detroit. But
I mean, does he go to Detroit? Because to me, that's a really clear possibility that he's probably going to be one of those top 5 draft picks.
He's going to be the number 1 pick.
You think so?
Yeah, I'm pretty positive.
Do you think the Jaguars pick him? They've got a lot of talent on defensive line, and they've drafted a lot of defensive line talent the last couple of years.
I don't think you can ever have too much defensive line talent if you're a bad team trying to get good.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would agree with that. Do you think, because here's my thought. If he doesn't become that guy, like that's the number 1 pick, I mean, certainly you would imagine that Detroit picks him up, right? You would think.
Yeah, I mean, there's the guy from Oregon, Kayvon Thibodeau, he's pretty good. Evan Neal at Alabama, I know is getting some hype. Derek Stingley from LSU, that he's a corner. But then you're starting to get into like, I don't know, pretty just normal dude, like good football, really good football players. Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame, really had a huge impact against the Badgers. He's up there in that top 10 talk, but like, to me, and what I've heard basically on ESPN and other TV shows.
That's not a good sign.
Is that Aiden Hutchinson is the number 1 guy. And it seems to be kind of done and done, no matter who got the number 1 pick was going to take him.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Because that's the thing is like right now in this day and age, the way the NFL has worked out, like it's been so like underwear league focused, so combine focused. So I don't want to ever say, never say never. But yeah, he does look like, when we talk about like the Bosas, the Watts, guys that have played stellar Big Ten football and go to the pro and have really great careers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Rashawn Gary, was he Michigan too?
He was also Michigan.
Kind of similar.
Not as highly touted.
No.
And I would say that.
But did thrive in Harbaugh's system as well.
Yeah, and kind of played that same type of role. Now, Hutchinson, he kind of also projects as an edge rusher,
right? Just
like Gary, but played a lot from the inside as well. So
and he's so strong. I mean, he was just throwing dudes all season long. He's really impressive to watch. I was watching some film of him. He's so good.
Well, yeah, and of course, his dad spent a little time in the league there, so another Michigan alum there. So that factors as well.
Was it Chad?
No, it's Chris. I thought the same exact thing that I thought Chad Hutchinson, because Chad Hutchinson also played for Michigan, didn't he?
One of the Chads did, not Pennington. He was Marshall. Hutchinson might have been.
I don't know. Anyway, if you know, tell us about it. Podcast for the w@gmail.com. Let's get to the Packers, man.
Dude, yes.
This was a team that, we talked about. I just want to say this. As Nick Stradamus, the most important thing is being ahead of your time.
Oh.
You make statements, and you always want to be really early. You want to be an early adopter.
Yeah. Adaptive.
So we saw, as I've been predicting all year long, David Bakhtiari, of course, came back.
Yes, Nick's guy came back, came up big for you.
Just a little early. Just a little.
10 weeks.
If 10 weeks gets us to like May 2nd, then
I'm glad this is done. This is like the Paolo plot line in Lost, which really lost a lot of
I have
viewers for
you've
him.
lost me,
See?
and you've probably lost some viewers for us.
I'm just glad it's over so we can get back to the good stuff.
It's funny though, because looking at this whole setup with Bakhtiari early on, I thought, oh yeah, he could come back early on in the season. Now they put him on the PUP list. I said, okay, that's an activation of maybe week 6. And there was all these kind of rumblings like, oh yeah, Bakhtiari should be ready to come back. He came back, was activated off of the IR, basically had a setback, had some more surgery. We didn't know all this at the time. And each week, I think we had an episode called Bach is Back, if I remember correctly.
Yes, we did.
So-
That was, like I said, I think that was 10 weeks ago.
So we saw him this week. Once again, another early adopter moment for me. But I do want to say this, John, because now that we're getting into our actual pro football focus rankings, we saw a couple guys that really elevated their standing. Now, Bakhtiari is never going to be ranked this season because he just doesn't have the snap count to get us there. However, he is ranked based off of this one performance as a 75.2. That would make him our best currently active defense or offensive tackle. And honestly, all of our tackles are really highly ranked on here. Elton Jenkins, the Rocket Man, who we will not see, unfortunately, 82.3. Dennis Kelly not far behind Bakhtiari. He's ranked 44th among tackles, so right middle of the pack. And then Billy Turner a little bit behind Dennis Kelly, surprisingly. However, I would say that Kelly has had the benefit of being a pretty bad pass blocker, so not traditionally known as a very good pass blocker. So I think he's outperformed expectations in that role. But ultimately, it all adds up to me as being this is a really deep offensive line, 10 deep, some may say. And in this preseason game, we saw how deep that team can go, not only at that position, but a variety of others. We talked about Patrick Taylor briefly. I'm feeling really good about this team and what we could possibly bring to the table. Obviously, we knew that this could be a loss, and I said last week a number of times, like the Lions are going to try to punch us in the mouth. They ultimately pulled out the victory. But now here we go. We got a little bit of a break. Not only did we get Bakhtiari back, but we also got Josh Myers back. That allowed us to move Lucas Patrick over to that right guard spot, a spot that was previously held by Royce Newman, who has kind of been underwhelming. Now, he's a rookie. Glad to see him starting there, but Runyon really solidified that left guard position, which I'm not surprised. I was glad to see it because I think he has played better than Newman. But I don't think this closes the door on Royce Newman, and I think he got some really valuable reps as a young player. And certainly he'll be ready to go if we need him.
Yeah, I think Royce Newman is one of our 10 starting caliber for a good team linemen that we just somehow have. Our Nathaniel Hackett has always been an offensive line guru. Matt LaFleur has always been great with linemen, putting them in position to succeed. This season has been no different. We did need especially Bach, the high end talent has been a real, I think, under discussed and maybe under the radar kind of weakness of this Packers team on that front line. We have not been physically dominant other than that Minnesota game against another opposing team since I think that game right after Elton got hurt when Yash, I can't remember which game that was, maybe Bears game, where Yash really like balled out and did the dance with AJ Dillon.
I mean, honestly, Yash has been really solid, but
he has.
I think more to the point too, and as we've seen, these players, under a lot of these guys under the radar. You and I kind of knew because we've been watching tape on these guys. We've watched the preseason. We've watched the things that most people aren't watching. But I don't think we can really understate how nice of an offensive game plan they've put together based off their coaching. Now, Nathaniel Hackett being talked about in head coaching conversations, he is interviewing for that Jaguars position. We obviously got him from there. And obviously, he comes from a really nice coaching tree himself. I believe Buddy Hackett was his father, a guy that coached for a number of years in the NFL and had was kind of a contemporary, or rather Mike McCarthy was a contemporary of his system. But Adam Stenovich, when we brought him in as our offensive line run game coordinator, now that's a guy that's done remarkably well, but also a guy with a bit of a pedigree. Our offensive assistant offensive line coach is Luke Butkus. Does that name sound familiar to you?
Sounds like a dick.
Yeah. So also, I believe the nephew of Dick Butkus. So these are guys that have been around the game, and I think really making names for themselves as far as what we might see. We've always seen Green Bay churn out these head coaches that have gotten to other teams. I mean, going as far back as like Steve Mariucci, John Gruden, Andy Reid in the Holmgren era. We saw that continue. We saw, Joe Philbin went and got a spot. We even saw our former tight ends coach go to the Giants and just coach miserably for a while there. But I think we're going to see that next crop. I think we're going to see that start happening here. And not only just like with the guys that we have offensively, but I think we'll see guys like Jerry Gray probably get a shot somewhere else, the Packers passing game coordinator somewhere else. There's a lot to really take from that, and I think what it adds up to is LaFleur has done a hell of a job, not just as a coach, but as a coach assembling a squad, and I think he is very much deserving of a head coach of the year honor. Not only because he's got probably the MVP in Aaron Rodgers, but it's just crazy to see how this team has put itself together from nothing, really. We basically got rid of everybody, and I mean, had Aaron Rodgers, had Devontae Adams, had some really nice pieces, David Bakhtiari, Kenny Clark. We could talk all day there. But to really come in and have to revolve that door, and how quickly they did it with a bunch of guys that weren't really household names yet.
Well, Matt LaFleur has
the flower
has established himself as the best looking and the quickest to 30 wins coach in the entire history of the Green Bay Packers organization. He has etched his name, if he can get a Super Bowl or two, into the stratosphere of guys like Mike Holmgren and Mike McCarthy. I think he's already there. And it's only a couple guys with last names that start with L above that, and that is Lambeau and Lombardi. I think, as I've stated on a previous pod, that Matt LaFleur has a real opportunity to get to that level. And the way that he's navigated these injuries, and also something we talked about all last season and this season, the Packers enter the playoffs as maybe the healthiest team in the NFL this week, or starting this week and into our next week when we'll actually play a game. That is not by accident. That is by knowing that this is the most important part of the season. That is through a strength and conditioning team that must have come with LaFleur, that is hyper conservative, especially early in the year and all the way through, that puts its guys in a position to be healthy when it matters most. Now, you can't do much about a torn ACL for Elton Jenkins, no doubt. But guys like Jair Alexander with what could have been a season-ending shoulder injury, maybe for another team, he comes back after 4 or 5 weeks and re-injures it.
Or he comes back after 4 or 5 weeks and isn't very effective.
Right. Or you got a guy like Bakhtiari on another team, max contract guy, especially at that time in the season, the middle of the season when we were getting a couple losses, maybe he's rushed back for another team. I mean, the Buccaneers do that. You know, the Rams definitely do that. They play guys hurt. Aaron Donald last year is a perfect example. Throughout the season, he was suffering from a shoulder injury. And then the playoffs came and he was still suffering from a shoulder injury, and he got taken off the field by Elton Jenkins because physically, the guy that we saw was not the guy everybody kept talking about all season from a physical standpoint. What I was looking for is the second coming of Reggie White. What we got was a defensive lineman who's pretty decent.
Let's not suck our dicks too early here. Zadarius, we don't know what we're going to see from him.
Sure.
Jair, we don't know what we're going to see from him. Maybe they come back and they're super rusty. Maybe they have setbacks.
I'm not worried about Jair.
I'm just going to knock on wood because you're jinxing the shit out of us. Because Jair, and it's readily known, he came back, refusing to do the surgery for the chance that he could come back. So I want to be cautiously optimistic. However, with that being said, this is a really strong secondary without Jair.
Speaking to Matt LaFleur and speaking to his hiring, now that the season is complete, it was clearly and obviously a resounding success, proving that LaFleur and Goot and them know far more than we do at this current stage of time.
Maybe not we do, but
not we, but
not
we, the people, the field mice in the field. Joe Barry was a resounding success, added a physical element to this defense that did not exist previously, and navigated injuries to players that previously, had they gone down, we would have been absolutely fucked. Whether it's Zadarius, Jair, Kenny Clark, Tyler Lancaster, somebody that that's been in and out recently. You've got guys like, it's just such a rotating cast to get Pro Bowl worthy performance all season out of one Devondre Soup Campbell. I think he's the defensive player of the year personally. Now I'm biased, but also show me a guy that had a bigger impact on the defense this year.
Rasul Douglas
In some capacities, but also he doesn't do what Devondre does.
And we saw it in this game.
But another example of Joe Barry's excellent coaching this season.
And not only that, but like the forethought on Gutekunst's part to bring in a guy that really does contribute. But the one thing that I don't think we've made enough mention of, and I know we've made mention of all sorts of stuff, it's this awareness of the way that our season was going to go. Now, we did know very early on we had a late bye. Our bye didn't come until... Gosh,
I think it was like week 13.
It was extremely late. Let me see here. Our bye came the end of November, beginning of December. So from November 28th when we played the Rams, then we had 2 weeks until we came and played the Bears at home. So
yeah, week 13.
So understanding that, but we also had a bit of what I would call a mini bye, and let's talk about that a little bit because we played two teams not slouches in any way. We played the Cardinals. We went to Arizona on October 28th, a Thursday night game on short rest after beating Washington, a game that was surprisingly difficult for us.
Taylor Heinicke reminds everybody of Brett Favre, Nick. Have you heard that?
Now, here's a guy. And let's talk about this because then we went to that Kansas City game, a game that we probably should have won, but we didn't have Aaron Rodgers. But we had a solid extra few days. We had, I think, 10 days rest between those two games. And I think just realizing that and taking advantage of that, and we did get, so I think when it's all said and done, it looks like, man, we overcame all these challenges, but we did it in a smart way where we essentially got roughly 3 bye weeks throughout the course of the season, now going into the playoffs being our third. So I do want to say the Detroit game was uninspiring. If you were expecting that to be a big game for us, you were sorely mistaken, and that played itself out. But now as we're going to the playoffs, like you mentioned, we're set to be very healthy. We got Zadarius coming back to be our third down specialist. We've got Jair coming back to probably lead this secondary, but at worst, he's our third. Maybe, if he's banged up, we don't necessarily have to rely on him to be that stud guy because we've seen Rasul Douglas play very well, one of the lowest quarterback ratings when throwing in his direction. And that's without mentioning a guy like Eric Stokes, a rookie that's come in, been tested early and often, and has overcome the adversity there. All to the point where we're looking at like Kevin King, who's become a great special teamer for us because we don't need him to really play the amount of snaps. Now, Shannon Sullivan's gotten a lot of those snaps. We've even seen King play some kind of spot minutes as a safety. So,
well, that's the thing with our secondaries.
We're super multiple.
We'll throw all of them out there sometimes. We'll throw Jair, Shannon Sullivan, Rasul Douglas, Kevin King, and Eric Stokes with Darnell Savage out there sometimes. Our toolbox is so deep. And when you think of it that way, especially now, I do want to start shifting the conversation a little bit to who we may see here in the playoffs.
Let's do that because we've got the bye coming up, or do we need to talk about that more next week? Because we aren't going to have any Packers coverage next week. We are going to have the 100th episode. Maybe Marty's going to come on and talk to us Packers wise.
Well, next week we're going to know who we're playing. So let's go through the possibilities of this. So we can't play the Buccaneers next week. If the Buccaneers win, they will be on the other side of the bracket. If the Buccaneers win, also the Cowboys, if they win, will be on the other side of the bracket. So it's 49ers, Cowboys at home, Cardinals, Rams at home, and Buccaneers, Eagles, Buccaneers at home. Who do you think is going to win out of those matchups?
Honestly, I think anyone can win these.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of teams.
Me too.
Every team here has kind of played below or above their level. Now, Philly's on a huge streak. And if I've learned anything about the recent NFL is streaky teams, watch out. Because as much as I'd like to sit here and say like Tampa's going to win this for sure, they also didn't look very good the last couple weeks. The Panthers, that's a little different. That's a team that's also regressing. But like you look at the week before, they almost lost to a very inferior team. So
Tampa is not the juggernaut it was last season.
No, absolutely
their offense
not.
Is, but their defense is nowhere near the same type of defense.
And now they're without Antonio Brown, who frankly I don't think that's a huge loss for the locker room.
That
but
means nothing.
He does add an X factor that stretches a defense. But they almost lost to the fucking Jets. Like nearly lost to the Jets. And let's be honest, what a cakewalk ending to this schedule. Now they lost to the Saints, 9-0, skunked by the Saints, I mind you. They blew out the Panthers twice, but those are teams that are destroyed by injury, and then almost lost to the Jets. This is not a team that inspires a lot of confidence to me at this point. But let's look.
Bruce Arians is undefeated against Aaron Rodgers, but we won't see him till the divisional round, so we won't talk about that matchup. What I will say about Tampa Bay is that they are, again, third in the league in rushing yards against, but they are 17th in the league in yards per rush, which they were first in both last season. So this is not the same team.
And what I will say is the Eagles could beat them if they can control the clock.
Speaking of yards per attempt, Eagles only allowed 4 yards per carry on the ground. They have a passing offense that gave up, a not terrible amount of yards.
Stunning endorsement.
That secondary, we played them last year, and they still have the same issue. That secondary is so short that a team like the Buccaneers, if I was to predict a game, I think Tampa Bay should be able to just get enough big plays. We're talking about the number 2 scoring offense in the NFL, Tom Brady.
I also do wonder though about how does Tampa respond to a quarterback like Jalen Hurts?
Right.
That brings some questions. And if he gets injured,
and it's Philly,
yeah,
Tom Brady, little history there.
I'm not ready to count out the Eagles, but
Nick Foles era.
Let's assume that the Buccaneers probably pull that one out based off of let's just say solely win percentage. The Buccaneers probably pull that one out.
Okay. So that would put the Buccaneers now. Cowboys, Niners. Did you have a pick?
So Cowboys, Niners. This is interesting, too, because to me...
It's like the 90s. John Madden is so happy right now.
To me, the Niners really had a spirited victory here this last week. Really sticking it to a divisional opponent. pulling out in overtime, really proving that they demand to be there. I do kind of err on the side of Dallas winning. But once again, Dallas lost to the Cardinals the week prior, and the Cardinals looked pretty shitty. So, man, I think it's really anybody's matchup with these other teams. As I said last week, I question the fact of any of these teams being dominant. I think this is one, in my opinion, one of the better matchup lineups of teams we've seen in recent years.
I think it is a good matchup. I also think that the Cowboys are. I just feel like a Mike McCarthy versus Aaron Rodgers showdown is inevitable at some point. Maybe it's this year. This team, the Niners are good, right? The Cowboys are elite at some things. Specifically, they have the most interceptions and forced turnovers in the NFL.
Yeah.
They have the third most knockdowns, quarterback knockdowns in the NFL. This is a defense that gets after you when you throw the ball. Rushing defense is not necessarily their bread and butter. Their, let's see, yards per attempt, they are, well, they're not even in the top 25. They're like 21st, it looks like, in yards per attempt rushing the ball. They are a team that you can run on a bit, but like I said, passing defense, they are elite. Now that kind of reminds me of a Mike McCarthy team, honestly, but we never picked the ball off like that.
Here's what I'm going to say too. As far as like the Vegas spreads, this is the closest spread of any playoff team in week one, or any playoff game in week one, rather. And as much as I love to fanboy Micah Parsons,
the spread?
3. It's a 3-point spread.
Wow.
And as much as I love to fanboy Micah Parsons,
you do. I hate that shit.
The Niners, I mean, I hate that shit. I didn't even say his name until you said it last week. The Niners have probably the best chance based off their personnel to take advantage of that Micah Parsons and how multiple he can make an offense or a defense rather, because the Niners can run the ball because they do run that same zone scheme that we do, but also they have George Kittle. So I think they really have a unique possibility, or possibly the unique ability to make Dallas have to kind of pick their poison that not a lot of these other teams have. Now, maybe Dallas comes out and blows them out and gets some turnovers.
That's my prediction if I were to make one.
But I do think that, God, we've seen the Niners grind some teams out. We've also seen them get pretty decimated by injuries this year. This could be closer than it seems, but either way, man, I hope it's a good game. I'd rather play Dallas than San Francisco, if I'm being totally honest, just based off of our recent playoff history against those two clubs.
Well, that is certainly not possible, actually, because if the Buccaneers win and either way, if the
I'm
Cowboys,
not necessarily saying next week, but I'm saying, as the playoffs go on.
So the Cowboys to me are the team other than us to beat in the NFC, and I'll tell you why. I think that this game is, while I do agree that on paper it looks like it could be close, Dallas averaged 31.2 points per game this season, leading the NFL by a full point over the Buccaneers. Is San Francisco capable of scoring 30 points against a team that they're going to force 2 or 3 interceptions, most likely, Dallas. Can San Francisco score 30 points and give up 2 interceptions?
I think that they're probably the offense that is most equipped to not have to leave themselves susceptible to the interception. That's possible. That's kind of the claim I'm going to make. And I'll say this: if I'm choosing a head coach right now in today's NFL between Mike McCarthy and of course Kyle Shanahan,
McCarthy.
I'm going Shanahan.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
See, I think Mike McCarthy this season has proven to be like a top 5 coach in the NFL. That team is not that good, talent-wise.
We'll see. I mean, Micah Parsons has been a revelation. They have gotten a lot of great production from their recent early draft picks.
He's made Dak far better than I thought he'd ever be.
But also so has Trayvon Diggs.
Yeah.
getting him more opportunities. Dak has played very well.
Yeah.
But if we know anything about Mike McCarthy teams is that they rely on the pass more than they should, and that totally screws them.
And they can't stop the run.
So we'll see what happens here. But this episode's going on super long.
Okay,
We've talked about the two matchups. Let's get to the third one here.
Because this is likely where our opponent will come from. Arizona at L.A.
Yeah.
What do you think of that matchup?
This one's interesting to me again. And this is the second closest spread. This is actually a 4-point spread here. So, and also very close. The over-under, they've got dude, this is crazy because Arizona's at 50, Rams 50.5. So
wow.
Very, very close on the over-under here. Actually, all these are very close on the over-under. I'm confused now. I don't know how Vegas works. Never mind. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it to the home team, the Rams, on this one. Mostly just because, like, you got to pick somebody, and I don't know where else to find a difference from. The Cardinals, to me, seem to be regressing these last bunch of games, lost this past week, and I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one. J.J. Watt will be back. They've activated him.
Yes.
So we'll see how active he is and what he looks like.
My guess is active.
Well, yeah. I mean, he will play.
Right.
That's a foregone conclusion. But how active is he really going to be, and how much is this injury going to affect him?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a good match. These are all great matchups.
The playoffs this season, even like brief look over to the AFC, you've got Bills, Patriots, Raiders, Bengals, Chiefs, Steelers. It's just amazing across the board. But this matchup in particular, to me, I don't know who's going to win. I think it'll come down to who can stop the other one on the final possession of the game. I think that there is a lot to be said for the contrast in styles, whether it's Los Angeles is like second or third in passing attempts on the season. Arizona is seventh in rushing attempts on the season. You've got in Arizona a defense that really kind of centers in on the running game. On the other side, you've got a defense that really kind of makes its hay in protecting against the pass. And you've got two offenses that are super explosive, though, like you said, Arizona's has not been lately. I think that this is the game to watch, and I think that I don't know who's going to win, but I hope that we don't have to play whoever does. I'd much rather play either the Niners or the Eagles than either of these two teams.
And all that to say that we don't know what the hell is going to happen, but I do know
we're going to be there.
John. I do know this. Once again, I have earned another Packers draft cap because the Ravens suck. The Ravens are terrible. As all of you know that have listened to our podcast each and every week, I have a running hat bet with a dear friend of ours who is unfortunately a big Ravens fan.
As a Packer fan, you're a longtime winner of these bets.
Yes. Every year I get a draft cap from this dude. And the second the Ravens lost, and I was telling John this before the pod, so I'll share it here because I think to myself, oh man, I feel really bad for him that the Ravens lost, and I'm ready to, provide some words of sympathy. And first thing he says is, "Oh man, I wish my team played in a crappy division." And I go, "You do. We swept your whole division." So that's how I feel right now. I'm pumped about my next draft cap, John. I'm really pumped about these playoffs, and I'm pumped for next week when we can give something awesome away to one lucky fan, and also to do it with you right here and celebrate 100 episodes, man.
I can't believe it. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
So just to run down, you've got, I'm just going to say this and put words in your mouth. Niners, yep. You've got the Niners, I've got the Cowboys. You've got the Eagles, I've got the Bucks. Did you have a preference in the
I'm going to say Rams because they're the home team.
Rams. So in your situation, we'd be playing the Eagles next week. In mine, we'd be playing the Cardinals because I took the other team in that matchup than you did. Nick, let's see how it plays out. Either way, thank you to all our listeners that have stuck with us for 99 episodes. Goodbye to the ones who are leaving us at this juncture, and hello to the new ones who will join us in the triple-digit episode count category.
99 episodes. but bad ain't one. Our first episode, all you need is love. And I hope, John, as you and I look into the triple digits, that maybe we see a new starting quarterback by the name of Love dominating in Green Bay. But before that, let's go win some playoff games.
Go Pack, go. Go Bucks. Bucks in 6. Badgers on Wisconsin. We love you all.
And thank you for joining us, whether on YouTube or on forthewbuzzsprout.com, where you can find us anywhere.
Where we are there.
Spell
5 stars only.
Such a long episode.